Salam sejahtera kepada semua, kepada rakan-rakan pensyarah kita yang daripada UPSI dan juga saya maklumkan ada ramai ni dalam talian daripada rakan-rakan daripada universiti lain. Kami mengalu-alukan pada pagi ini kehadiran secara dalam talian yang berbahagia Profesor Dato Dr. Mohamed Abdul Majid daripada Universiti Sains Malaysia USM. Ini merupakan kali kedua lah Datuk Isa bersama-sama kita. Terima kasih Datuk. Kali pertama hari itu pada bulan 12 baru je lagi sebelum hebahan dari FRGS dibuat. Dan Alhamdulillah kita dah terima hebahan pada 18 Januari. Okey. Terima kasih Datuk kerana sudi terima sekali lagi undangan daripada pihak RMIC. Untuk kali ini ialah sesi Bengkel Permohonan FRGS dan juga PRGS 2021. So bersama-sama kita dalam talian juga adalah yang berbahagia pengarah RMIC Prof Tajul Suhaizam Said. Okey. Jadi untuk memulakan sesi perkongsian kita pada pagi ini, saya mulakan dulu, saya jemput yang berbahagia Prof Tajul untuk menyampaikan sedikit kata-kata aluan. Silakan Prof.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yang bahagia, terima kasih Tuan Dr. Nurjan, Timbalan Pengarah di RMIC UPSI yang diraihkan, yang dihormati Dato Profesor Dato Dr. Isa bin Majid, Ketua Domain Sains Tulen dan Gunaan KPT dan juga daripada USM. So bagi pihak RMIC UPSI, saya mengucapkan ribuan terima kasih kepada yang bagi Datuk kerana sudi membantu UPSI untuk menghasilkan proposal FRGS dan juga PRGS yang lebih berkualiti. Dan untuk kesempatan ini juga saya mengalu-alukan jugalah rakan-rakan daripada Persatuan MRA daripada UA dan US yang kita jemput bersama untuk bersama-sama lah. Tujuan kita jemput bersama ni adalah untuk kita nak satu sharing dan satu lagi adalah untuk kita juga UPSI juga nak dapatkan networking lah bersama UA dan US lah. Bukan untuk geran-geran kolaborasi, smart partnership untuk permohonan geran-geran yang akan datang lah. Okay. Bagi pihak UPSI, sekali lagi saya ucapkan terima kasih kepada Majid Datuk dan juga semua rakan-rakan di UPSI dan juga UA dan US yang hadir pada pagi ini. So Alhamdulillah, thank you. Dan sebelum saya habiskan tu, saya juga nak jemput lah rakan saya daripada UM, Dr. Tan, untuk nak bagi sepatah dua kata bagi pihak MRA. So silakan Dr. Tan.
Terima kasih. Selamat pagi Dato' Isa. Selamat pagi semua rakan-rakan. And then I'm Xiaowei, Secretary of the Malaysia Association of Research Management Administrator, my RMA. Saya membuat ucapan ni dalam English sebab kita ada rakan-rakan yang bukan Malaysia dari private university. So first and foremost, on behalf of my RMA, I would like to thank UPSI for inviting my RMA as a co-host or co-organizer for the webinar. Thank you very much, Dr. Prof. Tajul. For the participants who are new to my RMA, actually we were established in the year of 2019 as a national level association open to individuals and institutions who are interested in supporting research management objectives. So the function of my RMA signifies our readiness to enhance research management at the professional levels on par with international practices. Over the last year, we had held a few webinars and seminars, workshops on grant management, patent search, and also bibliometrics. So for our members who had attended in our second AGM on Monday, 25th of January, I think you have some idea on what are our plans for 2021. The activities in January is just a start for us, and we will be organizing more webinars and workshops in the coming months, and hope everybody will be able to join. We will do announcement from time to time. So lastly, we are also calling for new members. Please share our activities with your colleagues and peers, and we invite them to join my RMA. If they are interested to join, kindly visit our website at www.myrma.org to register with us. Thank you very much. Enjoying your workshop today. Bye.
Dr. Nojan, thank you very much.
Okey, terima kasih Prof Tajul dan juga Dr. Tan ya daripada My RMA. Terima kasih Doktor. Okey. So sebelum kita memulakan meneruskan sesi kita pada pagi ini, izinkan saya sedikit untuk memperkenalkan panel jemputan kita iaitu Prof Dato Dr. Mohamed Isa Abdul Majid. Okey, beliau merupakan profesor dalam bidang farmasi di Pusat Racun Negara Universiti Sains Malaysia. Beliau juga pernah memegang beberapa portfolio penting iaitu di peringkat nasional dan juga antarabangsa. Di antaranya adalah sebagai Director General of the Malaysian Institute of Pharmaceuticals and Nutraceuticals, Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, Chief Executive Officer, National Institute of Biotechnology Malaysia Berhad, Director Regional World Health Organization WHO Cooperation Center for Western Pacific Region, dan juga yang paling penting beliau terlibat secara aktif di Kementerian Pengajian Tinggi dalam geran-geran yang dana penyelidikan Kementerian Pengajian Tinggi, antaranya adalah Ketua Domain Pure and Applied Sciences untuk FRGS. Saya ingat dah lebih daripada 10 tahun Datuk bersama-sama sebagai Ketua untuk Domain Pure and Applied Sciences. Begitu juga Ketua Domain untuk Pure and Applied Sciences bagi PRGS Geran. Beliau juga merupakan Auditor MYRA KPT, Task Force for High COE Grant Scheme KPT, Steering Committee Member for High COE Funding KPT, dan juga Task Force for Research Excellence Consortium Research Fund KKP. Okey Datuk, insyaAllah pada pagi ini rakan-rakan semua Datuk akan berkongsi berkaitan dengan kriteria baru bagi permohonan FRGS dan juga PRGS 2021 yang kita memang nanti-nantikan lagi lah. Memang kita nanti-nantikan daripada pembukaan 18 hari bulan 1 hari itu, sebab kami di peringkat RMIC pun belum lagi menerima taklimat lah daripada KPT yang dijangkakan pada 26 semalam tapi ditangguhkan kepada 29 pada hari Jumaat ini. Jadi ini merupakan maklumat pertamalah yang kami terima daripada panel KPT. So tanpa membuang masa, saya menjemput yang berbahagia Prof Dato Dr. Mohamed Isa Abdul Majid. Silakan Datuk.
Terima kasih Dr. Nojan. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera ya. Terlebih dahulu saya mengambil kesempatan ini untuk mengucapkan banyak terima kasih lah kepada Profesor Dr. Tajul Suhaizam Said, pengarah RMIC UPSI di atas undangan untuk saya tak boleh anggap saya mewakili KPT lah buat masa ini. Saya cuma nak berkongsi pengalaman daripada segi apa yang saya telah lakukan kajian latar belakang tentang penambahbaikan yang telah dilakukan oleh KPT lah untuk saya juga mengambil kesempatan ini. Ada echo lah. Okey, saya juga mengambil kesempatan ini untuk mengucapkan banyak terima kasih kepada Dr. Nojan yang telah berhubung dengan saya tentang keperluan lain lah di pihak rakan-rakan penyelidik di UPSI. Saya juga mengucapkan banyak terima kasih kepada Dr. Tan, pengurusi My MRA. It is good to know that there is also an NGO that looks at research management. Saya juga mengucapkan banyak terima kasih kepada rakan-rakan penyelidik di UPSI dan juga universiti awam yang lain yang turut serta dalam webinar kita pada pagi ini. Saya seperti yang dimaklumkan oleh Dr. Nojan, pagi ini merupakan sesi bengkel. Jadi saya berharap sangat-sangatlah ada banyak interaksi di antara saya dengan tuan-tuan dan perempuan dalam kita membawa penyelidikan di Malaysia ke peringkat yang lebih tinggi lah. Jadi daripada segi perancangan saya pada pagi ini, let me see whether I can ini dia tak mau bergerak skrin dia. Let me look. Okey. Cadangan saya pada pagi ini untuk bengkel kita selama lebih kurang 3 jam masa agak panjang tapi saya masakan kalau sekiranya kita ada banyak sesi interaksi di antara saya dengan tuan-tuan dan perempuan masa 3 jam tu akan jadi singkat dan saya berharap sangat-sangatlah saya boleh belajar daripada tuan-tuan dan perempuan daripada segi idea nak memasukkan permohonan baru untuk tahun 2021 bagi permohonan Geran FRGS dan juga PRGS lah. Untuk sesi pertama pagi ini kalau sekiranya diimbas semula apa yang telah saya terangkan pada bulan 12 yang lalu, penghujung bulan Disember saya telah menerangkan permohonan berdasarkan polisi dokumen yang diguna pakai berdasarkan pada wawasan 2020 dan seperti tuan-tuan perempuan sedia maklum melalui 2021 ni ada banyak polisi baru yang diperkenalkan di antara polisi tersebut ialah wawasan kemakmuran bersama 2020 sehingga 2030 dan saya akan masuklah komponen polisi yang terdapat di bawah WKB 2030 dalam menerangkan keperluan kita untuk memenuhi dokumen polisi yang perlu diisi dalam sistem migran. Dan kalau sekiranya kita lihat pada 9 Disember 2020 Kementerian Sains, Teknologi dan Inovasi juga memperkenalkan satu lagi dokumen polisi yang berkaitan tentang sains, teknologi dan inovasi. Dan dasar ini dikenali sebagai Dasar Sains, Teknologi, Inovasi Negara di STIN yang dilancarkan melalui 9 bulan November dan itu juga perlu kita faham dan maklumat yang terkandung dalam di STIN 2030 bermula daripada 2021 sehingga 2030 perlu juga kita masukkan dalam permohonan geran dana fundamental di KPT selain daripada itu juga kalau sekiranya kita rujuk dokumen di STIN di peringkat MOSTI ada kerangka 1010 My STIE yang menerangkan bagaimana pendekatan R&D yang akan dilaksanakan mulai tahun 2021 bagi tujuan melonjakkan teknologi yang terdapat dalam negara supaya dia dapat diperkembangkan dan selanjutnya bila ditingkatkan lagi daripada segi nilai R&D yang dilakukan dalam negara, dia berupaya untuk menyumbang pendapatan ekonomi negara dan perlu juga kita rujuk 1010 My STIE yang dihasilkan oleh Akademi Sains Malaysia di dalam permohonan yang kita akan buat di bawah kita 2021 sehinggalah 2030. Selain daripada itu juga satu lagi rujukan polisi yang perlu kita buat adalah SDG Sustainable Development Goal yang diterima pakai oleh Kerajaan Malaysia. Kalau sekiranya kita lihat di peringkat United Nations ada 17 SDG yang diutarakan, tapi untuk Malaysia kita ada 18 tambahan satu lagi SDG dan kalau boleh rujuk kepada 17 SDG yang telah dikeluarkan dengan tambahan satu lagi SDG yang bertajuk Societal Harmony and Happiness bertujuan untuk mengukuhkan hubungan antara kaum di Malaysia. Jadi untuk peringkat permulaan ni saya akan terangkan pencarian maklumat latar belakang tentang WKB 2030 di STIN 2021 sehingga 2030. Ada juga kerangka 1010 My STIE yang dikeluarkan oleh Akademi Sains Malaysia dan satu lagi polisi dokumen adalah 18 SDG Sustainable Development Goal yang terpakai untuk Malaysia lah. So itu syarat-syarat yang saya akan terangkan lebih lanjut lah dalam peringkat pertama bengkel kita pada pagi ini ya. Alright. Dia tak mau gerak. Dr. Nojan boleh bantu saya daripada segi kontrol skrin saya tak? Dr. Nojan? Saya rasa saya tak boleh nak gerakkan slide saya lah.
Boleh Datuk, nanti kita minta Dr. Nojan sekejap Datuk untuk bantu Datuk.
Okey.
Datuk, cuma permintaan daripada kita punya participant pagi ni Datuk. Tadi Datuk share juga lah dalam dua language Datuk. Sebab because of kita ada juga daripada US yang international punya lecturers.
Okay.
Okay, thank you Datuk.
Right, thank you very much for that particular information, Prof. Tajul. So, just to recap back on the first part of my presentation this morning, I'll be touching on the new policy document that has been introduced by the government of Malaysia. The first new document that we should be referring to is called Shared Prosperity Vision, SPV. Which was launched in 2020, and this will be implemented all the way until 2030. The second policy document that every submission should be referring to would be the new policy known as Policy on Science, Technology and Innovation for Malaysia, which was launched by the Honourable Minister for Science, Technology and Innovation on the 9th of December 2020. And part of the policy being introduced by Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation is another associated policy document known as 1010 Malaysia Science, Technology, Innovation Economic Framework. Which will be implemented from 2021 all the way to 2030. And there is also another essential policy document known as the 18 Sustainable Development Goal, 18 SDG, which is similar to the United Nations 17 SDG, with the exception that in Malaysia, we have introduced one additional element, which is known as societal happiness and harmony. So that will be, in summary, the first part of my presentation. We will be looking at the first part. Dr. Nojan, can you take me to the next slide, please, Dr. Nojan? Okay, so this is just to highlight to you the first part, which is actually the new policy document that we have to refer to in submitting our proposal under FRGS. Next, Dr. Nojan. So basically, in the first part, I will be explaining to you the rationale of the various funding mechanism by the Ministry of Higher Education in Malaysia. Next, Dr. Nojan. Okay, so basically this gives an overview of the objective and the introduction for the various funding under the Ministry of Higher Education. There is right now 4 funding mechanisms being offered. The Fundamental Research Grant Scheme in Samayu, Scheme Grant Penyelidikan Fundamental. There is also the next level of funding mechanism, which is known as Prototype Research Funding Scheme. There is, can we mute the mic on the participant side? Okay, now the first 2 funding mechanisms, fundamental as well as operates on the basis that the submission has to be on a single discipline basis, meaning if someone is from engineering, then there is opportunity for the researcher and the engineering to apply a single discipline research project, and this single discipline funding
Dato,
mechanism.
sorry for interrupting. Okay. For participants who on their mic, please off. Okay.
Okay.
All
So
right. Okay. Thank you.
Alright, so coming back for the first two funding mechanism, FRGS as well as PRGS, the funding operate on a single discipline approach, meaning if someone is from physics, then they can submit under the identified single discipline domain, and the processing will be done by expert under the physics discipline, whereas the other two mechanism, transdisciplinary as well as long-term research grant scheme, the application is open for researcher, and there is a need for researcher to come up with a team, and the team has to be on a multidisciplinary approach. So basically, the difference between FP with T and L would be in the sense that whatever research problem that needs to be done, it has to be on a single discipline or a multidisciplinary approach. And now the other important aspect that we need to be uh, that we should be looking at is the output expected from the four funding mechanism operated by Ministry of Higher Education. The first output that we have to remember would be the talent. Now, for institution of higher learning, the quantification for talent would be in the form of either MSc or a PhD, and this output for talent has to be dependent on the time frame for the research funding. If the research project is for a 2 years duration, then the output expected from a 2 years project would be in the form of a master student. And if the funding request is for a duration of 3 years, then the expected talent output would be in the form of a PhD student. The second output required for the various funding under Ministry of Higher Education would be publication, high impact publication, and the minimum requirement for FRGS as well as PRGS would be a minimum of 2 publication, and there is a new guideline being produced for this year. The two output expected from fundamental as well as prototype research grant scheme would be at least one of the publications should be in high impact journal categorized under WOS or Web of Science, and the second publication for certain discipline has to be either in Scopus, and for other selected identified discipline, the second output can be from Scopus, MySite, or ERA listed journal. Now, the impact expected from the various project being done by researcher at private as well as public university, one of those things being identified would be based on the talent being generated through the research funding. The talent would be able to have the skill of conducting the research. To the society, the ministry expect that if there is solution coming out from the research project, then this should be able to resolve some of the current problem facing in the Malaysian community. And eventually, if we talk about the final impact from the various funding mechanism being provided by Ministry of Higher Education, would be the outcome should provide some additional income to the country, and that's why we see one of the emphasis being put in by the government of Malaysia is anything that we do in research for the country, it should eventually be able to come up with new policy. It should be able to bring in additional income, and eventually this will lead to the prosperity of the country. So basically that would be the overall objective for the various funding mechanism under KPT. Dr. Nojan, next slide please. Now, next slide please, Dr. Nojan. Okay, so basically the way it is being done is whatever research would be something that is applicable to Malaysia. Now we understand that if you talk about research being done, it is not something which is advanced as compared to other advanced economy. But nevertheless, what we do, we are hoping that through the research funding provided by the government of Malaysia, it should be able to show the competitiveness of the local university, especially in the global ranking of university throughout the world. The output in the form of high impact journal will eventually shows the expertise available in the country. The output in the form of talent would be able to provide highly skilled workers for the country. And the other aspect that is being given emphasis in terms of the research funding would be, if you look at the whole process of bringing research funding to the marketplace, at least the fundamental scheme being provided by Ministry of Higher Education would be able to generate new knowledge, and eventually this can be brought up in the value chain so that eventually this can be commercialized and contribute towards the income generation in the country. So essentially, this would be the four important output that needs to be emphasized in the application for the research funding under KPT. Next, Dr. Nojan, please. Okay, so basically, I will just be switching to Malay now. So basically, if we talk about the way it is being managed at Ministry of Higher Education, whenever there is a new application to be submitted under the online system, there is an online system provided by Ministry of Higher Education, and the system is known as Malaysian Greater Research Network System, or in short, Geran. So everything is online. And in addition to the online system, there is also guideline being set up by Ministry of Higher Education, and the guideline has to be referred to in terms of what can be requested under the grant, and there is also the aspect of how the project will be managed if the proposal is successful in terms of funding, being given funding by the ministry. So eventually, if you talk about the funding mechanism by Ministry of Higher Education, it is now being done online. So it is actually a paperless mechanism in terms of application. And there is also a reference guide in terms of what can be applied under the various funding mechanism provided by the Ministry of Higher Education. The other important aspect associated with the funding mechanism being provided by Ministry of Higher Education is once the project has been approved, there is also the monitoring being done by Ministry of Higher Education. And the way it is actually being monitored would be there is a need for research management organization in respective public university as well as private university to submit progress report on 6 monthly basis, and the ministry at the other end would be carrying out monitoring at least once a year just to see the progress of approved project under the various funding mechanism at Ministry of Higher Education. So basically, what I've shown here on this particular slide would be the sixth guideline being developed by Ministry of Higher Education in making sure that the implementation of the project is according to financial procedure being operated in the country, and at the same time, if there is any issue in terms of project implementation, then the various research management organization or research management center at the respective institution would be able to refer to, and should there be any question, they would then be the Secretariat at Ministry of Higher Education to be referred to in terms of getting further advice. So basically, if you talk about the funding mechanism, there is the application side. Once the proposal has been approved, there would then be the monitoring coming in, and at the end of the funding mechanism, if the project is completed, the output would then be collected by Ministry of Higher Education, so that the eventual or the final report can then be passed on to the central agency in terms of the success story for the various funding mechanism under Ministry of Higher Education. Next, Dr. Nojan. Dr. Nojan. Okay, so basically, this explains the whole process being developed on Ministry of Higher Education. There is this whole process of managing the research funding, and this will be starting from the point of announcing the opening of the various funding mechanism at the beginning of the year, and it will then be submitted online. The ministry, upon the closing date of the various funding mechanism, will be relying on experts being called in to assist Ministry of Higher Education in evaluating the proposal. And once the process of evaluation has been completed, there would then be approval coming in from Ministry of Higher Education. In terms of implementation of the project, there would then be guidelines being given to each researcher, and the researcher has to refer to the guideline in terms of the implementation. There would then be the monitoring being done on the basis of report being submitted online also every 6 months, and the ministry would be meeting up with the respective RMC, Research Management Center, to look at the auditing process, and eventually there would be the end of report phase, where the output and the impact would then be collated, and then be passed on to central agency in terms of determining the overall success of the funding mechanism for Ministry of Higher Education. So basically, this describes the whole process of the funding mechanism of at Ministry of Higher Education. Next, Dr. Nojan. Okay, so basically, if you were to refer to the guideline, there is also there is also another guideline which is known as Tadbir Urus Dana Penyelidikan. Basically, this is actually the operational document to be referred to by researcher as well as RMC, Research Management Center, in terms of the project implementation, and the component for the various section available in the operation for the implementation of the research project covers reporting, financial management, the monitoring that needs to be done, the terms of reference for the researcher, the terms of reference for the research management office, and there is also the fifth component, which look at the ethics of conducting the research, as well as making sure that the integrity of data can be complied to during the implementation of the project. So dalam dokumen, right, perlu saya terangkan di sini, dalam kita memohon Geran FRGS dan PRGS, ada garis panduan yang perlu kita rujuk, ada dokumen takbir urus, dan ada juga satu lagi very important component, the policy document being put up by the government of Malaysia. So you need to be referring to that. And for my presentation, untuk persembahan saya pagi ini, saya berharapkan I should be able to explain to you the new policy document that has been introduced by government of Malaysia, the guideline associated it, new guideline being proposed by Ministry of Education, as well as new way of us implementing the project. Dokumen pertama, policy baru yang diperkenalkan, syarat-syarat baru permohonan, dan yang ketiganya output baru yang telah ditetapkan oleh Kementerian Pengajian Tinggi. Next, Dr. Nojan. Okay, now one of those significant changes being implemented. I've shared this slide in my last presentation to UPSI. Now, the way it is actually being evaluated at Ministry of Higher Education previously, from 2020 and before that. If we want to submit any new submission for research funding, we have to comply to the 9 priority areas under what is known as Vision 2020. Now, since the ending for Vision 2020 comes into effect on 31st December 2020, so in terms of referring to the new policy document, the 9 priority areas is no more applicable. Right? Itu kita kena faham lah. Right? Kalau sekiranya kita memohon permohonan yang lalu, we have submitted our previous submission, dan katakan sekarang tu, katakan permohonan ditolak dalam kita yang lalu, untuk permohonan baru, kalau sekiranya kita nak submit ataupun kita nak hantar permohonan baru, we have to make changes to the policy document yang digunakan sebagai rujukan. Right? Kita tak boleh menggunakan 9 bidang keutamaan negara starting from this year. Right? In fact, the 9 priority has been expanded to cover 15 new areas. So remember that, it is no more 9 priority areas. Now, the way it is actually being evaluated at ministry, if the proposal comes in under the funding of transdisciplinary as well as long-term research grant scheme, the research cluster would be processing or evaluating the proposal. Now, if the proposal or if the funding is under fundamental research grant scheme or prototype research grant scheme, then the way it is being evaluated would be done at the domain level. So we have to remember, if you talk about domain, there are 7 domains that we have to be referring to, and we have to determine ourselves which domain do we want to place the proposal. If someone comes from the engineering faculty, then the best domain would be technology and engineering domain. Now, if someone comes from the faculty of science, then the suitable domain would be pure and applied science. If someone comes from education sector, the best domain would be social science, right? For the new application to be processed. So, kena ingat, domain masih lagi wujud, research cluster masih lagi wujud. So, I'll be explaining to all of you the 15 new area under shared prosperity vision. Ada 15 bidang keutamaan yang dikenalpasti di bawah wawasan kemakmuran bersama yang akan dilaksanakan sehingga tahun 2030. Dr. Nojan, tolong. Okay, so this is new. It is available on the website. This document should be referred to if we want to decide which priority area that we want to submit our application. So if someone wants to do further study on this policy document, it is available on the website. It is known as Framework for Shared Prosperity Vision, SPV. And if someone was to refer to this particular document, the 15 new priority areas next, Dr. Nojan, is listed here, right? So it started with financial hub all the way down to tourism as a major income earner for the country. And number 15 on the list would be Malaysia Truly Asia, which cover all aspects about tourism and potential income generation for the country. Yeah? Now, let me just share with you, if you do research on IR, Industrial Revolution 4.0, then the best priority area would be under KEGA 3, IR 4.0. So if you are looking at, say for example, automation at the industry level, then just prepare the proposal, and then if there is a need for you to identify the relevant priority area, it should be KEGA number 3. Yeah? KEGA stands for Key Economic Growth Activity, and number 3 refers to IR 4.0. If you are thinking of looking at new commodity, for example, then it comes under KEGA number 7, which is new commodity for Malaysia, and this is known as Commodity Malaysia 2.0. If you are focusing on halal issue in the country, then the relevant KEGA would be KEGA number 6, and that should be listed in your proposal. And I'm sure if you were to look at the new format for my grant, you have to identify the relevant KEGA in the submission of your proposal. Right.
Sorry, interrupt. If education, to which KEGA we should map or align with?
Ini, I think what you can do, Dr. Nojan, I think you can identify KEGA number 3, which is IR 4.0.
Okay, Dato', thanks.
Right? Because I think the country is actually pushing for IR 4.0, and one of the essential components would be skilled workers, besides automation. Okay. Now, next one, Dr. Nojan. Okay, now the second document would be the new Dasar Sains Teknologi Inovasi Negara, which is actually part of Shared Prosperity Vision 2020 to 2030. And basically, the whole idea for the new draft for STI, Science, Technology, Innovation, is actually to bring about new economic growth for the country. And the essential element for the STIN is what is known, next one, Dr. Nojan. Okay, this is actually the full document, which is also available on the website of Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. Now, if you want to do further study on this, the associated document would be 1010 My STE Economic Framework. Next one, Dr. Nojan. Okay, so the 10 technology driver that needs to be pushed by researcher in the country is listed here. So these are the 10 priority areas: 5G, 6G for telecommunication, all the way to bioscience technology, which covers looking at new agriculture technique, that advanced agriculture method that can improve productivity as well as bringing about more wealth to the country. So if you can refer these are areas that will be given emphasis by MOSTI: 5G, 6G, sensor technology, 4D, 5D printing, advanced material, all the way down to bioscience technology. Next one, Dr. Nojan. Okay, now further description given by Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation would be this framework the implementation of the various initiatives under the STIN 2021 to 2030. And the good thing about this document is it describes the 10 socio-economic drivers, which is actually all the way from sustainable energy down to environment. One of it is education. Kalau tengok, so in this particular case, education is being given emphasis. Now, if you were to look at the driver needed under the 1010 My STE, okay, which I've described just now, 5G all the way down to bioscience. So basically, anything that we do in terms of our research, say for example, advanced material in education, so it should be translated in tertiary education, and it could probably be starting at the secondary education. So that would be among the new things that we need to be doing in terms of carrying out research in the country. So
Dato, there is sorry Dato to interrupt. Okay, so there is question in chat. What about health and medical research? I just go directly because you are discussing on this.
okay, there is a document which I prepared here for health sciences. Next one, Dr. Nojan. So if you were to look at the socio-economic driver kan, yang tadi on the horizontal side there are 10. One of those is education. There is also one sector being identified, and this is actually medical and health care, socio-economic driver. And the vertical refers to the technology driver, in which we as researchers should be putting priority. We need to be looking at the current state of technology in the country now, and what are the key technology that we need to be doing in making sure that the current technology can be leapfrog to bring Malaysia to a higher level in terms of the technology that we have in the country. So what is listed here is the new technology driver that is required for the country under the medical and healthcare socio-economic driver. So basically, if we talk about the current challenges, which is the pandemic for COVID-19, this policy document describes the various research that needs to be carried out. Say, for example, if we want to develop new antiviral treatment for COVID-19, so the technology that we should be referring to would be gene editing, known as CRISPR, if you were to look here. So this is one of the key technology that has been identified by the Academy of Science. So anything that looks at CRISPR as a new technology or as a new tool to develop antiviral or even diagnostic kit, this would be given emphasis under the new STI policy for the country. So this describes the relationship of new technology driver in bringing about new socio-economic or new wealth for the country, for the medical as well as the healthcare sector. So basically, to me, I think if you want to jumpstart in terms of understanding what is required, just look at this particular document, 1010 My STIE framework, for us to come up with various projects. And my observation for this particular document, if we want to submit new project under TRGS, transdisciplinary as well as long-term research funding, there is a need for us to refer to this particular document, strategize on how do we fulfill each technology that is required, and if we feel that we can form a new team to address this issue, that would be something that we should be doing. We have completed the submission of F as well as PRGS, because I'm very sure the new call for proposal and the transdisciplinary as well as LRGS would be looking at technology that is needed as identified under the 1010 MySTE framework. Right? So this would be additional homework that needs to be done by respective RMC at each university. Just look at my STE document and strategize how do we form various groups within the university and connecting this group with outside university or other partners to university so that we would be able to address the various identified technology that has been put up under this particular document. Okay, so next one, Dr. Nojan. Okay, so if you need to do further detail, what I've given you is just 1 out of 10. So if you want to know the rest, by all means, please retrieve this document from either Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, or you can go to Academy of Science Malaysia website and just get the document from the website, from this website. Next, Dr. Nojan. Okay, so I will take 5 minutes break to entertain question at the moment. So I've completed my part on explaining to you if there is a need for you to relate your proposal to the policy document, please refer to 3 essential policy documents. The first document would be Shared Prosperity Vision 2030. The second policy document, okay, so under Shared Prosperity Vision document, we have to relate our proposal to one of the 15 KEGA, right? Now, the second document that we have to refer to would be the new policy on dasar Sains, Technology dan Inovasi, and the third important policy document would be 1010 MySTIE framework. In order for us to say that whatever we do for the new submission, either F all the way up to L, this would be in compliance with the 3 policy documents that the government has produced for all of us. So, any questions so far? We'll take a break before we move to the next phase.
Okay, Dato, we already have several questions at chat section here. Okay, the first question is, I think this one is related to 10 to 10 MySTIE. What about health and medical research? And then what about psychology research? And the other one is on the mass communication research and biodiversity and environment.
Okay, now let me tell you what I've done is just to pick up an example from the respective document. I've also mentioned in my presentation that if you need further detail, then the best way of going about this is actually to retrieve the document. Now, I've yet to study completely the whole document. And to answer that question, I'm handicapped in that sense, but I would like to ask you to refer to the 1010 MySTIE framework in order for us to understand. Essentially, what is needed in terms of our submission for F and P, the most important thing is for us to identify KEGA, right? Now, I'm sure if we talk about education, it is actually being stated there. So if you want to refer to MySTIE, then if your relevant expertise is in education, so just refer to MySTIE's framework and identify that your socio-economic driver is education. So that would be what is needed in terms of our submission for F and P, right? Now, in terms of the evaluation, once you submit it and you identify that you are under education, which is one of the socio-economic driver, then the domain for the subdomain for the domain for social science would be processing your application, and we will not be looking at the relevance of your your proposal in relationship to the document, we will be looking at the technical issue that you would like to raise in your proposal. Okay. Now, I know if you know the full detail, you can relate to the content of that particular section. But it is enough to say that once you fill up the 3 policy document, that will enable your submission to be processed further under the relevant domain. Itu ya setakat ni. Now, if you need to apply under TRGS or LRGS later on, then I think there will be opportunity for the panel at Ministry of Higher Education to discuss further the relevance of your submission in relation to the detail under my STIE framework, right? For the online system, which is applicable for F and P, since the application is too big, I think to me, it is adequate that you fill up the relevant policy document and that's it. We would then be processing your application. But when it comes to higher funding mechanism, LRGS as well as TRGS, there will be further interaction between the evaluator and the researcher in terms of seeing how you connect to the various identified programs being identified in the document of my STIE framework. Suffice to say, for PRGS and F, as long as you can associate to the relevant KEGA and Malaysia socio-economic as well as the technology that you wish to submit. Itu ya. That's all that I can answer to that particular question. Right? I will be studying the document further, but if there is any further clarification, let me know and I will just be going deeper into the section that you have submitted to me just now. Boleh cakap tu. I'm handicapped right now to know all the detail about 10 socio-economic driver as well as 10 technology driver that is needed to push for all that. Boleh? Second
Dato'.
question.
Kat sini ada lagi Dato'.
Boleh.
I'm not sure yang ni sama mungkin yang macam Dato' cakap tadi lah. What about non-COVID research and under IR 4.0, is it include infrastructure and maintenance using artificial intelligence?
Benar tu. Kalau if you were to look at, say for example, IR 4.0, automation is key element for IR 4.0. So if you happens to be an engineer and say for example you have a manufacturing problem coming in where you prefer to do automation, then this can be placed under IR 4.0, which is actually an important area being identified under WKB or SPV 2030. Right? So anything that you propose, if it fits under KEGA, that will be given prominence. Now, I would like to stress here that the policy document is open. It is not limiting research, right? So anything that you propose and the end result would just be increasing productivity, that would be something that would be considered by KPT.
Okay, Datuk, ni ada lagi satu, one more question. There is already a grant in MOSTI for COVID research. If we submit proposal on COVID research to FRGS or PRGS, will the proposal be rejected due to technical knockout on the reason that MOSTI already allocated grants for this area?
No, there will be panel from KPT sitting on MOSTI panel. Now, and likewise, if we were to look at funding for COVID, there has been an opening being done last year by KPT itself. So anything that has been funded, it will not be funded again. So anything that is not covered by the previous funding, it will be considered under the new under the new funding mechanism. So basically that would be the basis. Anything that has been funded before, it will not be covered again. So the idea that you wish to introduce, it should be novel, right? Now, ada satu question tadi just now on education being placed under KEGA 14, kan? But I think as long as you can, the best thing to do is actually to look at the policy document, what is stated under KEGA, right? Now, what I've told you, what I've shared with you is education is being identified under 1010 my STA, so no issue about it. Now, if it is not listed under KEGA, what do you do about it? So my advice to you is go for the full detail on what is being described under KEGA 3 in relationship to productivity and how do you produce skilled worker that will be required for IR 4.0. Right? Now, for other education sector, right, say for example early childhood education, I think the best thing for you to do is actually to look at the relevant KEGA that would be associated with early childhood education, right? So that would be my advice. I'm not saying that education not being given prominence under KEGA one of the 15 KEGA. It doesn't mean that it is not important. It is important, but you find the relevant emphasis being put up under each respective KEGA. Itu ya, boleh
Okey Dato'. Okey Dato', saya rasa ni penting juga satu soalan ni sebab di UPSI ni kami bukan saja fokus education tetapi juga social science ya. Salah satu
Okay.
juga daripada kita punya niche
Okay.
penyelidikan. Bagaimana fundamental issue dalam social science seperti sejarah, geografi, pengajian Islam.
Oh, ini
Yang ni kita nak mapkan dengan yang macam mana ni KEGA ni?
okay. I think we better go back to KEGA balik, Dr. Nojan. Ini
Kejap Dato'.
okay, now kalau tengok ini kata social science kalau kalau tadi dia kata education bahawa KEGA 14 perkhidmatan termaju dan moden misalnya, right? Now I think there is a possibility of putting your education too under advanced services or modern services. Now in this particular aspect, one important area that you can propose under KEGA 14 would be the use of what do you call it? The various teaching tools, especially if you were to see what we face right now during the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, we cannot have face-to-face education process. So if we were to look at education tool that can be developed, so that can be part of modern services as well as advanced services. Now, kalau balik kepada soalan social science, especially on the aspect of kata pengajian Islam, I think one of those things being given emphasis under KEGA ni, one of those things is Islamic finance. So the foundation for you to let the public understand about Islamic finance is also part of Islamic study. So that can be incorporated under KEGA 1. The second the second KEGA, which is also important related to Islamic study, would be Halal Hub, which is under KEGA number 6. So basically, this would be the two major driver for Islamic study. If you talk about other subject like history, opportunity that you can look at would be kalau tengok ni, Malaysia truly Asia is actually one form of us highlighting our history. So instead of looking at history per se, you can look at for us to promote history as part of KEGA number 15, Malaysia Truly Asia. How do you develop tools just to show the history of Malaysia in a multimedia way. Right? That would be opportunity under KEGA 15 lah, which is actually promoting Malaysia as a tourist destination throughout the world. So basically itu how I would answer those questions lah. Boleh Dr. Nojan? Itu kata how about values? Ini banyak soalan ni dia lebih bertanyakan kepada saya sebagai expert for KEGA. I'm not an expert on KEGA. Right? Apa yang saya boleh lakukan is dalam permohonan FRGS dan PRGS bila kita rasakan kata proposal kita address KEGA number 3, just put in KEGA in the relevant section the KEGA that you have identified relevant to your proposal. Now, you will not be graded on whether the KEGA that you have selected to diberi markah ataupun tak. There's no right, wrong or right answer. If you identify your project to the relevant KEGA, that is good enough, because in the reporting by ministry to the central agency, one of those things that the ministry has to identify is how many projects that has been approved at Ministry of Higher Education that is covered under KEGA number 3. Right? And then the further information that will be transmitted by Ministry of Higher Education, the detail of the various research project under KEGA number 3. Right? My task at Ministry of Higher Education is to look at the technical aspect, not so much on whether how does it fulfill KEGA. Itu ya, saya nak jawab macam tu. To ask me to explain further KEGA and what is the content of KEGA tu, I'm handicapped in that sense. Yang saya nak bagi nasihat to all of you is, once you have a proposal ready, then there is a need for you to associate that particular proposal to the relevant KEGA. Right? If it is related to agriculture, right, and it covers advanced agriculture, then you should be listing your project as KEGA 13. Itu ya? Boleh Wah, very tough question this time around, Dr. Nojan.
Okey Dato', boleh.
Boleh
Ada banyak lagi lah ni yang berkaitan sama lah, semua tanya berkaitan KEGA. Saya ingat tadi Datuk dah explain lah jawapan tu tadi.
Okay, so itu
Cuma yang
kata,
tadi yang kata tak ada based on pemarkahan ke untuk kalau mapping to the wrong KEGA, itu
tak
pun
ada.
that is
Itu
no issue kan Datuk?
itu bukan kita tanggungjawab. Kita sebagai macam ketua domain is to make sure kata the technical merit is being evaluated. Okay, the science that you have applied is valid. Itu ya. Right? Now, in terms of the policy maker at Ministry of Higher Education, that would be the second aspect of it. The PTDs at Ministry of Higher Education will be looking at the detail of the various project that has been approved and see whether it is in relation or is connected to the various KEGA being identified under shared prosperity vision. Right? Our task and your task is actually to come up with proposal, look at the proposal, and tadi kan dikatakan the impact. Okay, the impact tu under KEGA mana satu? Itu ya. Itu yang saya dapat jawab sekarang ni. Next one, Dr. Nojan. Kita masuk second part
Okey Datuk.
Okay, now this would be the criteria. Ini saya bukan ada satu lagi kah, Dr. Nojan?
Ini ada satu lagi yang slide tu. Yang ni pun ada juga dalam ni.
Okay, so
Datuk nak yang mana satu? Nak yang ni?
satu lagi.
Totally a new slide?
No, it is supposed to, okay. tak apa, just go ahead, share that screen. Just share that screen.
Okay, kejap ya Dato. Siti ni yang tengah bantu ni.
Okay, now ada syarat-syarat baru in terms of putting detail to your proposal. You have to remember one important component is for you to associate your project to the policy document. Now the second part is there are new conditions being put up by Ministry of Education in terms of the output. Now when we look at the processing, we will be looking at this detail. Now this would be the 6 new criteria that I will be highlighting to you. Now, satu, kalau sekiranya kita merupakan pensyarah, satu lagi, Dr. Nojan, I think this is not relevant. Satu lagi. Okey, ada 6 yang saya senaraikan tadi. Yang hak nombor 1 tu dia melihat dari segi kalau sekiranya kita merupakan pensyarah kontrak. Bukan pensyarah kontrak baru, tapi pensyarah kontrak yang telah capai usia bersarah. Saya agak yang ni bukan yang terkini punya tengok. Dr. Nojan. Ada yang the second version saya hantar kali kedua.
Ni yang second version Dato.
Second version. Tak apa, bring me back to tadi syarat tu.
Yang syarat tadi juga
Syarat.
Okey, alright, okey.
Okay. Okay, now this would be among others. Patah balik. Okay, the new I would say apa syarat baru the new condition or the new rules being applied right now. The first one that we need to remember, we need to be understanding is 01 refers to if we are expatriate staff, right? Now, we are allowed to submit our proposal on the condition that we still have at least 1 year contract with our institution, right? Now, what I've done here is actually to put up what has been stated in 2020. For 01-2021, in terms of our remaining time for service for expatriate staff or staff being employed on contract basis after retirement, at the point we submit our proposal, we should be at least having 1 year remaining in terms of our employment with the institution, right? Previously, it has been stated the time remaining should be at least 2 years. For this year, the condition or the rules has been changed to expatriate staff needing at least 1 year remaining in terms of our employment with the institution. Second criteria, if we are on sabbatical, for more than 6 months, we are not allowed to submit. There is also the third condition, which has been implemented last year. We need to identify one of our co-researcher as the next leader to come in if there is anything happen to us in terms of health status, right? If we are down with an illness, then the next leader to be will come in to make sure that the project will be completed on time. So that will be the condition being set up for 03. Now for 04, 05, 06, for FRGS, 04 refers to patent search, 05 refers to industrial collaborator, 06 refers to risk management. Now, if we are applying for FRGS, 04, 05, 06 is still optional this year. We have discussed at length whether to put it on compulsory basis for this year, but at the end of our meeting, 04, 05, 06 is still optional. You can either do a report on 04, 05, 06 this year, and if you submit this report on 04, 05, 06, you get additional bonus point of 5%. If you don't do it, then you don't get that 5% bonus point. Now, next slide, Puan Nurjan. Dr. Nurjan.
Assalamualaikum, Dato'.
Ya,
Boleh saya tanya sekejap? Maaf
boleh.
ya.
Boleh.
Saya Rozana daripada Universiti Belayar. Regarding yang kontrak tu tadi, Dato', itu
Okay. Okay.
dalam guideline tu mention 1
Okay.
tahun, satu.
Right.
And then nak fahamkan tadi Dato' kata untuk expatriate. So
Right.
does it mean that yang kontrak tu untuk expatriate ataupun pensyarah kontrak? Sebab ramai yang lantikan masih dalam kontrak. So dia jadi satu dilema untuk pensyarah baru.
Okay, now
Terima kasih.
Okay, terima kasih soalan tu. Now, dalam perbincangan dari segi kontrak ni, memang Universiti Malaya dia mempunyai syarat lantikan yang berbeza untuk pensyarah baru. Right? Dia tak dilantik terus atas tahap percubaan lah. Setelah tempoh 3 tahun, kemudian staf baru tu dilantik sebagai pensyarah tetap di Universiti Malaya dan juga di USM. Lantikan permulaannya dibuat atas kontrak. Now, dalam kes ni, pensyarah baru yang dilantik sebagai kontrak memang dibenarkan untuk memohon. Definasi 01 tu syarat kontrak tu lebih terpakai kepada pensyarah expatriate dan pensyarah yang dilantik selepas perbencen. Untuk pensyarah baru di atas status kontrak, tempoh 1 tahun tu tak terpakai. Because we understand that the appointment being done at Universiti Malaya, as well as at USM, the first time someone comes into Universiti Malaya as well as USM, they are being put on contract basis. So for new staff under contract basis, you can submit your proposal. The rule is not applicable to young staff on contract basis. Boleh
Boleh Dato', terima kasih. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, next one. Okay, now the other condition being put up by Ministry of Higher Education, I've mentioned just now that one of the output being stressed under FRGS, PRGS would be publication. Now, and the number that needs to be highlighted in your proposal would be 2 publication for a 2 years project as well as 2 publication for a 3 years project. Now, for researcher placing their proposal under STG, Sains, Tulen dan Gunaan, TK, domain ICT, and SKK, Sains Kesihatan dan Klinikal. One of the 2 that you have to highlight in your proposal has to be under Web of Science. So in this particular case, it can be Q1 to Q4 as categorized under Web of Science. The second publication has to be in Scopus for these 4 domain. Now, for other domain, SSI, especially lecturers from education, right? Domain warisan alam budaya, as well as social sciences, sastra itisas, warisan alam budaya dan sains sosial. One of those output for publication has to be under WOS, Web of Science, and the second one can be in Scopus or ERA or MySite. So there is flexibility given for the non-sciences researcher. Right? Previously, there was no condition being put up for these two publications. For 2021 onwards, the ministry has raised the standard for the two publications. For the 4 domain, STG, TK, ICT, SKK, the first publication has to be in Web of Science, and the second publication has to be under Scopus. Next. Okay. Now, the other new ruling being put up would be emolument that you can request under the budget for a PhD GRA, and this applies for a 3 years project. The maximum or the ceiling for a PhD GRA would be 2005 instead of 2002 for 2020 and before. While for MSc GRA, there is an increase in ceiling for 2,000 ringgit a month. Now, should you want someone to be placed under RA before you get them to be placed under GRA, one way of getting them to come on board is to appoint as RA, and the budget for RA can be put under vote 29, and this can be listed as enumerator, which is actually being paid on a daily basis. Okay. Now, so basically this would be in terms of the budget, the new budget that you can request for FRGS as well as PRGS. Next. Okay. Okay, so I will stop here for the time being to entertain question.
Okay, Dato', there are several questions here from the chat
Okay.
section. Okay, maybe I can read for you. Okay, the first question, mungkin kita pun dah jawab tadi. Saya baca syarat dalam guideline menyatakan kontrak 1 tahun. Bukan 2 tahun, ya betul tadi Dato' dah explain adalah 1 tahun. Daripada tarikh, maknanya baki perkhidmatan mesti sekurang-kurangnya 1 tahun daripada tarikh
Tarikh tutup. Tarikh tutup.
Tarikh tutup penyelidikan.
Ya,
31st March.
Ya.
1 year from 31st March.
Okay.
At least 1 year.
Yeah, at least 1 year.
Lepas tu, next question. If someone on sabbatical currently but will be back to work before the result is announced, can they apply? Sekarang tengah sabbatical, tapi balik nanti sebelum result announce dah balik, boleh tak nak apply?
Dia macam ni lah. If you intend to go for sabbatical at least 6 months, during the implementation of the project, you are not allowed to apply. Right? If you happens to complete your sabbatical and you have less than 6 months of sabbatical leave before the project can commence, you have to remember the approval would normally be coming in around August. Okay, so if you are coming back before August, you will not be applied with this ruling of 6-month leave. Right? If you are on 3 months leave, contohnya, once the project has been approved, you are allowed to apply. Right? So
sorry, Prof, I'm the one who asked that question. So
Yeah.
if I'm currently on sabbatical, but I'll be back to work in August. So
Okay,
usually the result comes out around October, November. So
Okay.
that means I can apply lah.
yes.
Okay, I thought it was before the due date of the application, so that's why I'm just checking on that.
Okay, so you have to remember this time around, according to the client charter for KPT, we would be announcing. We are supposed to complete our evaluation by July, and the ministry is hoping to announce the result by August. So if you are coming back before August, And once the project has been announced and approved, you have to remember there is also the stage where the grant will be transferred to the respective institution. And normally the launch of the project will be somewhere around October, November. So
Okay,
if you're
thank you very
coming back
much,
before
Prof.
that, you will not be subjected to this ruling.
Okay, thank you very much.
Alright, most welcome.
Hello, Prof. Boleh saya tanya satu soalan tentang
Yes.
sebatik ini? Saya akan ambil sebatika dari bulan 4 dan balik pada bulan 9, 5 bulan sahaja.
Okay,
Saya
so
apply grant ini FRGS.
ya, pasal you punya tempoh tak cukup, tak melebihi 6 bulan. Anything that is more than 6 months, they say kata you focus on your sabbatical leave. Anything less than 6 months, you are allowed. Okay?
Thank you very much, Prof.
Right. I'm not the final say tau. I think this question should be referred to Dr. Syamimi or Prof. Dato Fauzi. I'm here more on explaining to you the discussion that we have had in terms of the new criteria being set up for FRGS, PRGS. The decision-making process does not lie with me. It lies with tu. Okay?
Penyelidik saya ingat kena semak dengan RMC masing-masing nanti sebab sudah dimaklumkan taklimat bersama RMC akan diadakan pada hari Jumaat ini. Jadi saya nanti mohon semua penyelidik untuk double check selepas itu dengan pihak RMC masing-masing.
Okay, that would be the best way, Dr. Nojan. Thank you very much for assisting. Okay,
Kemudiannya next question. Okay. Regarding co-researcher, if there are more than one co-researcher in the proposal, can the rest be from other institution? If there is already one co-researcher from the same institution. Dah ada co-researcher satu daripada universiti yang sama, kemudian dia nak ambil daripada co yang lain.
Okay.
Is it okay?
Now, kalau tengok the way it is actually being done, if you talk about the domain, it will be processed according to the domain. Now, as long as you pick someone who has the expertise within that particular discipline, say if the proposal is under subdomain for physics, you can pick anyone who you can rely upon and you categorize them as expert in physics. So the expertise can be within the institution and it can be outside the institution, within the country. Or it can go to the extent of you can invite someone from outside the country. If you know someone and you can convince him to be part of your team, that would be even better. Because when it comes to the grading, because one of those things that we are supposed to be grading is the composition of the team. So if we see that you are bringing in expert from other university, you get extra point for that. Our wish list as evaluator is for you to bring in expertise from outside the country, which would allow the assessment or the evaluation or the proposal to be given the highest mark in terms of composition of team. So there's no limit as to the membership of the team, and it can be from within the institution, within the country, or outside the country. Okay.
Ada lagi ni Dato'. Okay. Regarding syarat tambahan, collaboration with industry and agency, does it means external collaboration with other non-institutional agency, public or private?
Okay. Ini dah pergi more towards the other part. Now, kalau if we talk about collaboration for FRGS, I'm referring to FRGS alone. Now, there is a section under migrant where you have to describe collaboration with industry, and this is actually under additional information. If you were to look at additional information, there are 3 components that you have to fill up. The first one is patent search. The second component to it would be industry collaboration, and the third would be risk management that you have done for your proposal. Now, coming back to the team composition just now, Now, once you have someone from outside Malaysia to be part of your team, you can incorporate the outside researcher to be part of your research team. And the best way for you to do this is actually for you to get the CV of that particular person or for that international researcher, and you fill up my grant system for that particular researcher lah. So that once it is being compiled, the name of the international researcher appear to be part of the composition. So in this particular case, you have included the international researcher to be part of your team. Now, the other way of you doing things is you can put up outside researcher under industrial collaboration, which comes under additional info. Now, what you need from them is a letter of intent, MOU or an MOA, a memorandum of understanding or memorandum of agreement from the organization or from that particular researcher, international researcher. Put it under LOI, and then you complete the other two. And if you complete the 3 sections under additional info, you get bonus point. So there are 2 ways of doing things. If you have collaboration from industry or from international organization, place it under composition of team. You get maximum point of 5% there. Right? If your team has 3 different cohort and you have external researcher as part of your research team, the maximum mark for that particular section would be 5%. Now, if you place it under additional info as another option, you get 5% bonus point for that particular section. Boleh ya?
Okay, Dato, ada lagi satu soalan ni from our lecturer, Dr. Claire from Faculty of Music. Are journals under Emerging Sources Citation Index, ESCI, by Web of Science considered under WOS? This journal usually do not have impact factor yet.
I'm sure kalau if you look at Web of Science, selalunya this journal would be Q4, right? And as time goes, then the classification would be changed to a higher classification, Q3, Q2, Q1. So basically, if it is being listed as under Web of Science, the minimum that we take into consideration would be Q4. So as long as it is listed under Web of Science, that is good enough in terms of fulfilling publication for Web of Science. Itu ya cara saya nak jawab, Dr. Nojan.
Okay, tak apa Dato'. Okay, lagi satu ni 2WOS. Is it okay if we publish 2WOS because they require one kan? Kalau 2, is it okay?
Kalau 2, over and above.
Okay.
Over and above. So the minimum requirement is 1 WOS, 1 Scopus for the 4 domain. But for other 3 domain, 1 Web of Science, it can be Q4, but the second publication can be either Scopus or MySite or ERA.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum Datuk. Satu soalan Datuk.
Ya, silakan.
Saya Ilyas daripada UPSI. Kalau dia tidak memenuhi kriteria penerbitan, adakah grant tersebut boleh tutup? Okay. Kalau dia dah boleh tutup, adakah boleh apply seterusnya FRGS untuk tahun berikutnya?
Okey, ini Dr. Nojan kena tolong saya kalau someone tak fulfill one of those 2 criteria, selalunya proses blacklisting comes in lah. You be blacklisted. Selalunya tempoh blacklisting ni 2 tahun selepas tarikh tamat. So dalam tempoh tersebut memang tak boleh nak apply grant baru lah. So dalam kes ni kena refer kepada Dr. Nojan ataupun Prof Tajul lah daripada segi tempoh blacklisting. Dan kalau sekiranya dah tamat tempoh blacklisting, boleh apply grant baru dah.
Definitely, Dato. So the RMIC will play the roles. So we will refer to the SOP or the peraturan yang KPK, BKPI dah bagi. So kita akan buat listing tu lah, Prof, sebelum kita submit, because of otherwise that all the RMICs will be off lah kalau tak tengok betul-betul the tally tu.
Okey. Okey boleh
Okey, yang ni ada juga lagi soalan SSI, WAB, and saya rasa ni yang social science hardly to get publication in WOS. Can it be two Scopus index publication?
Okey. Saya akan tunjuk satu contoh bawah social science. Tapi dia promise 3Q1. Okey, so saya rasakan bila kami terima permohonan yang datangnya daripada SSI, SS ataupun WAB to say kata dia boleh promise 3Q1 yang diperlukan hanya 2. Right? And bila kita tengok nilai yang dipohon tu value for money we certainly will support proposal yang boleh menjanjikan 3Q1 untuk social science ni. Now, if another proposal comes in daripada social science juga, tapi dia kata dia boleh hasilkan dua scopus ya. Nilainya selalunya value for money lah. So, bagi kami as evaluator, we will definitely support proposal yang menjanjikan over and above daripada yang di bawah tahap minimum yang ditetapkan. Itu ya saja saya nak jawab soalan macam tu. Dalam contoh proposal yang berjaya, case study memang bawah bidang sains sosial dan dia boleh nyatakan jurnal WOS Q1. So bila kita lihat nilai grant yang diperolehi itu, bila dia kata 3Q1 for a research funding of 80,000. Right? So each paper is about 20,000. Impact tinggi. Dalam kes ni, proposal tu menjanjikan satu output yang value for money. So dalam kes ni memang kita akan sokong lah. Kalau proposal datang dengan nilai 80,000, 2Q1, 2 scopus. We look at value for money jugalah dalam kes ni. Itu yang saya nak jawab pun. Bila kementerian kata satu WOS dan satu lagi scopus ataupun itu, kita harapkan itu dapat dipertimbangkan oleh pemohon lah. Boleh nak kata kita akan tolak, tak boleh juga pasal ni benda baru kan, kita nak tengok juga dalam permohonan akan datang.
Okey Datuk, ni ada lagi satu paper hanya satu acknowledge untuk dalam satu artikel jurnal tu, saya ingat ini untuk acknowledgementnya hanya boleh untuk satu acknowledgement FRGS. Boleh ke tu? Ini saya tak faham soalan daripada
Itu
yang
saya nak kata. Dia kalau ikut ni yang kita faham daripada segi tadbir urus FRGS setiap penerbitan yang dikeluarkan, ini bukan permohonan ni. Masa peringkat permohonan, yang selalunya kita perhatikan jumlah penerbitan dan kualiti penerbitan. Selalunya bila ditanya tiada penghargaan ataupun pengiktirafan diberikan kepada grant FRGS, dia lebih kepada proses pemantauan ataupun proses penutupan grant lah. So kalau sekiranya ikut garis panduan dan saya percaya ini juga diguna pakai di RMIC UPSI lah. Kalau sekiranya tiada pengiktirafan diberikan kepada grant FRGS, memang kita tak terima. Betul kan Dr. Naujan?
Ya betul. Dan kalau ada banyak grant itu, banyak grant, yang pertama tu mestilah yang menyumbang utama kepada grant tu, itu dia akan counted. Dia tak akan boleh double counted. Satu artikel untuk claim to several project.
Okey, itu memang standardnya lah kan, Dr. Naujan
Ya, standard tu. Dalam takbir urus dah jelas lah kalau di UPSI ni kita dah maklumkan kepada penyelidik kita. Okey, yang seterusnya PhD and Master Science Is it the amount after we included EPF, SOCSO and SIP?
Okay, now untuk GRA ni, from what we know, and from what we observe, bila diletakkan the value of 2005, itu tak perlu SOCSO EPF. Right? Memang 2,500 tu is actually basically given to the student. Ada setengah-setengah universiti kita difahamkan dia buat potongan EPF dan juga SOCSO. Kerana the idea of GRA is actually memang there is a scheme yang mengatakan tak perlu SOCSO dengan EPF. Ada setengah-setengah universiti memang dia buat potongan. Tapi yang kita berbincang di kementerian dan memang kita katakan 2005 tu sepatutnya apa potongan diberikan kepada GRA ceiling tu. So
Ada lagi soalan Dato'.
RMIC UPSI dia UPSI dia bagi 2005 kan. Tak ada potongan EPF lah.
Kita memang tak ada libatkan potongan SOCSO dan EPF tu. Okay. Untuk tahun ni maksimum yang PhD boleh pergi is 2005 lah.
Right.
Yang disyaratkan untuk Master Science 2000.
Memang tak ada potongan EPF.
Tak ada.
Dia jadi memang kita akan bagi 2005 tu. Tapi ada setengah-setengah universiti dia buat potongan EPF dan juga potongan ke atas Geran bagi sumbangan 11% sumbangan EPF tu. Yang kita faham skim GRA ni tak sepatutnya lah kita buat potongan EPF.
Okey, ada lagi satu soalan Dato'. If my research to use AI to improve disease detection, we need to involve two discipline, AI and medicine, but here we focus on developing AI model. Will this proposal be considered in FRGS?
Okay, dia dalam kes ni if someone from medical faculty wishing to do study on augmented reality ataupun this kind of technology in terms of education ke things like that, the best thing to do is to place this proposal under ICT because there is a subdomain on augmented reality, artificial intelligence, things like that under ICT. But when it comes to evaluation, for that particular proposal, the ICT domain would be processing it with the expertise being called from SKK, Sains Kesihatan dan Klinikal. Okay? Boleh nak minta bawah medical pun boleh, domain SKK ataupun hantar permohonan melalui domain ICT yang memang put emphasis on artificial intelligence.
Assalamualaikum Dato'.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Mohon bertanya soalan. Saya Suzana. Saya nak bertanya, contohnya lah jika Geran itu require dia output dia satu paper, tetapi pensyarah menjanjikan 2 paper sebagai output. Tetapi di akhir projek beliau tak dapat meet 2, dia hanya dapat meet 1 saja. Adakah ianya dikira achieve KPI ataupun tidak?
Ini dari segi pengurusan RMIC UPSI dia. Kalau sekiranya untuk grant FRGS dari dulu lagi memang ditetapkan 2. Tak pernah dikurangkan lah tempoh dari segi bilangan penerbitan. So kalau sekiranya dalam kes when we put up in our original proposal 2, right? RMIC pun kata yes, it fulfill the minimum required as stated by KPT. So at the end of project, at the end of the exercise, you have to deliver 2. You cannot deliver 1. Kalau if you deliver 1, then you will be blacklisted.
Oh, okey. Okey, contohnya tadi kalau dia sepatutnya requirement 2 tapi dia janjikan 3. Tapi ending dia hanya dapat 2 sahaja. Dia tak
Okay,
dapat
so
apa yang
dalam
dijanjikan. Sebab
okay,
dijanjikan
so
3.
okay, memanglah kalau when you overpromise,
Over
okay,
promise, yes.
okay. So
Uh-huh.
in cases where you are putting up 3 more than the minimum 2, ministry will hold on to the promise that you have made in your proposal. If you say you want, if you say you promise 3, which is above the minimum requirement, when it comes to end of report, we will look for 3, not 2, because
Okay.
during the evaluation we look at the quantity that you promised, and since you are actually putting up an idea of value for money now, instead of 2 you come up with 3. On that condition we approve the grant. So if you cannot deliver at the end of the process, kita kata you have not fulfilled your obligation.
Alright. Okay.
Selalunya this kind of thing would be monitored at RMIC. Betul kan Dr. Najan?
Ya, kita terpaksa memonitor kalau di peringkat RMIC Universiti Pendidikan Sultan Idris ni lah, kami memang memonitor lah selagi apa yang dijanjikan oleh penyelidik tu tak tercapai. Itu memang kehendak daripada KPT sendiri. Dalam sistem memang dia akan appear. Kalau you promise 5 lah you kena fulfill benda tu. Dan selagi tak fulfill, selagi tu monitoring, you kena fill up every times lah. Setahun tu ada 2, tiap tahun tu kena isi selagi tak fulfill.
Okay. Alright. So kira kalau tak boleh nak over promise jugalah, kena ikut minimum
Okay.
requirement jugalah.
Itu ada setengah tu projek 2 tahun menjanjikan PhD. In terms of bakat lah ataupun talent. Dalam proposal. So at the end of the project, if you promise PhD for a 2 years project, the ministry will take into account not MSc yang diperlukan untuk projek 2 tahun, tapi PhD. So we look at what you have promised in the proposal.
Okay.
Okay ya?
Dr. Suzana dari fakulti mana, Doktor?
Saya pada agensi universiti luar.
Oh, okey. Nanti Doktor boleh rujuk dengan RMC masing-masing ya, Doktor?
Cumanya nak tahu sebab dalam status migrant tu sendiri, adakah ianya dikira KPT akan mengira sebagai ianya achieve ataupun tidak? Sebab researcher dah over promise kan. Dia sebenarnya meet the minimum requirement, tapi dalam sistem migrant tu sendiri.
Dia memang kita dari segi monitoring we look at the quantity.
Okay. So kata tu saya ambil maklum lah.
Okay.
Okay, terima kasih
Dr. Nojan, boleh kita ambil 10 minutes break dah sebelum kita continue lagi the next part?
Boleh. Ada juga lagi soalan ni tak macam mana Datuk nanti lepas tu.
Teruskan.
Ada sikit je lagi. Okay. Does number of publication depend on the amount of grant we applied? Meaning that higher amount, more publication?
Not necessarily. The way we do evaluation at KPT, we look at the output that you promise, right? And we look at the budget requested. If the budget is reasonable, we approve according to what you have requested for the budget as well as the output. Now, one of those things that we also take into consideration when it comes to quality of output, if you say you are going to produce not overpromise, tapi you say kata you should be able to deliver 3 papers based on the proposed study and the amount is reasonable, we say okay, you get the grant, and at the end of 2 or 3 years we will determine whether you have fulfilled your promise or not. Itu ya. Okay. So dalam kes ni, kalau if you say you put a very high figure, certain project, certain areas require expensive chemical. And if you can justify that in your budget, shouldn't be a problem for us to approve based on the budget request. Now, in our evaluation, we take into consideration that if you were to cut the budget, we have to take into consideration whether the cut will affect the outcome of the project. So it is always a balance of how much amount that you require and whether with that particular amount, you would be able to deliver the output that you promised. Okay, so we seldom cut the budget to the extent that the project cannot be implemented. If, however, should that happen, once you get the approval, you can then negotiate with KPT based on the budget that has been approved for that particular proposal. Right? Situation that we normally come across, the researcher put up certain budget, and once the approval comes in, the budget has been cut. So, and the researcher feels that they cannot deliver, then just inform RMIC of UPSI to just say that you would like to negotiate on the output because of the budget cut. Right? You are not forced to accept a project based on what we approve. If you see you cannot deliver the KPI at the end of the process, before you sign the agreement, before the agreement is signed between UPSI and KPT, let RMIC of UPSI to know that you wish to review the output based on the budget release. Itu ya, all that I can say. I know it is good once you receive the approval, but look at the budget to see whether you can deliver the output promise. You are not being forced to accept the budget and the output that you promised, right? There will always be negotiation process being put in place once the project has been approved.
Okey Dato', untuk soalan-soalan lain tu saya ingat partisipan semua, saya mohon maaf kita mungkin tak dapat entertain semua soalan di sini sebab saya tengok soalan-soalan tu lebih kepada takbir urus takbir urus dana KPT. Jadi saya memohon merujuk kepada RMIC masing-masing sebab kalau kita nak entertain satu-satu ni sangat banyak So saya mohon rujuk sebab ini memang berkaitan, saya tengok keseluruhannya adalah berkaitan takbir urus. Jadi mohon rujuk kepada RMIC masing-masing. Cuma Datuk, satu soalan terakhir sebelum kita break. Yang ni daripada Dr. Suo Yan Mei daripada Fakulti Bahasa FBK UPSI. Okay, if co-researcher from another country, beliau adalah international research lecturer. So topic can apply, is it can be applied focus on Malaysia only or need to cover the international co-researchers country as well? Makna fokus penyelidikan tu, topiknya tu adakah boleh Malaysia saja atau perlu Malaysia saja ataupun cover juga yang international co-researcher punya isu? Itu
saya kata kalau if you were to look at the objective of funding mechanism under KPT, it is actually more towards dia punya ayat yang digunakan penyelidikan beracuan Malaysia. So the focus is more on Malaysian context. So if the international researcher would like to study based on Malaysian experience, then I think that would be something that we encourage. But if it is actually for the funding is for comparative study between Malaysia and some other country, then I think the best thing to go for is international funding, right? When you talk about comparing Malaysia with other countries in terms of certain research topic, the way to go about it is actually to get research funding. For FRGS, PRGS, the word that you should always remember is whatever research that you do, it is actually for our consumption. Tadi dalam pembentangan tu saya kata penyelidikan yang dilaksanakan di Malaysia, penyelidikan yang dilakukan oleh universiti awam dan universiti swasta beracuankan Malaysia. It is actually to look at Malaysian context.
Okey Datuk, terima kasih. Saya ingatkan kita break, kita ambil masa untuk break lebih kurang 10 minit Betul boleh
Okay, and then saya nanti masuk PRGS plus also case study lah.
Okey, boleh Datuk. Okey.
Alright, terima kasih Dr. Nojan.
Okey. Terima kasih banyak Datuk. Okey, kita break semua for 10 minutes.